in just 1 second. Today we have with us Aidan Franco, who is the Communications Manager for the Southwest Ecological Restoration Institute's ReSHAPE program. Aidan has a bachelor's degree in environmental policy from Colorado College and a master's of forestry from Northern Arizona University, and is a passionate science communicator and particularly enjoys creating visual forms of communication. We also have Anson Call, who is a postdoc spatial analyst at the Colorado Forest Restoration Institute, and Anson holds a PhD in ecology, evolution, and conservation biology from the University of Nevada, Reno, as well as an MS and a BS in wildlife and wildlands conservation from Brigham Young University. Claire Rapp is the social science program manager for ReSHAPE and also a research associate at CFRI. The social science program includes research on decision-making, support tool effectiveness, and fuel treatment decision-making in the Southwest. Katie Withnell is a GIS specialist and data manager for the New Mexico Forest and Watershed Restoration Institute, working on the ReSHAPE TWIG team. And she has a BA in geography from Cal Poly Humboldt and an MS in geography from King's College in London. And Evan Herpa, I'm so sorry. I know you sent me how to pronounce your name and I just lost it in the milieu. Evan Yerpa is director of the Conservation Economics Institute and leads the ReSHAPE Economics program. He holds a PhD and an MS in forest economics and management from Northern Arizona University and a BS in economics from Centre College. So all of that said, I will get off your screen and turn it over to our presenters to speak on what you've come to hear about. You can go ahead and share your screen, Aidan.
Awesome. Thanks for the introduction, Laurel. All right, hopefully everyone can see my screen all right. Today we are going to be talking about the Southwest Ecological Restoration Institute's ReSHAPE program and our associated tool, the Treatment and Wildfire Interagency Geodatabase. And you heard all of our bios just now, but if you're interested in asking any one of us particular questions, our emails are here and also on the ReSHAPE website, which is reshapewildfire.org. Okay, so who is the Southwest Ecological Restoration Institutes? We are a group of 3 university-based restoration institutes in Colorado, New Mexico, and Arizona. Together, we co-develop, translate, and apply interdisciplinary actionable knowledge. So we really try to span between researchers and on-the-ground managers, bringing research between and answering questions. As we all know, extreme wildfires are a threat to our communities and forests, and all of us here are working to decrease the risk that these fires present. There's a lot of different ways to approach this problem and a lot of different angles to come at it with, including some of the ones that you see on the screen. All of these many different angles usually require high-quality, accessible data. And this includes data on wildfires, data on treatments, on decision processes, forest health and structure, and much more. Often, though, this data is really disparate. It's separated, it's in different databases that are inaccessible or behind a paywall, etc., hard to get to. So that's where we come in. We heard from policymakers, from land management agencies, and from the research community that there was a need to compile and display all of this existing information and data on treatments and wildfires at the national level. And so we took this problem that the federal systems of record that include all of this treatment data are not easily accessible or comparable, and looked at the goal of centralizing it all. And so starting off, we had Katie Withnell, one of our presenters today, worked on the New Mexico Vegetation Treatment Geodatabase, and that provided a model for us to work off of. Then we crosswalked the data from the Forest Service and Department of Interior systems of record on field treatments and created an open access tool with a user-centric interface. And we didn't do this in a vacuum. We worked with a lot of advisors and partners from the agencies themselves, Now we're working also with the National Association of State Foresters to get state data into the tool soon, as well as with Innovate Inc., who have worked really hard on this tool as consultants with us. So now I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Katie Withnall to talk about the tool itself, the Treatment and Wildfire Interagency Geodatabase.
Thank you, Aiden. Just a moment. All right, I'm going to give a demo of the TWIG viewer. I would like to ask all of you to hold off on exploring the tool while I'm giving the demo, just to avoid putting too much pressure on the website all at once. We'll definitely make sure to provide a QR code and links afterwards. The TWIG viewer is available on our website. In the upper right-hand corner, it says TWIG viewer. And the first thing that you'll see is a splash screen with a disclaimer that we are still under development and still in beta version, so there may still be some bugs and other disruptions. In the lower left-hand corner here, there is a self-guided tour that you can take. But I'm just going to click OK to dismiss that for now. A few things on the map. The map will center itself over your general location based on your IP address. So you can see that I'm in Albuquerque, New Mexico right now. In the upper right-hand corner, we have a toggle that will change the base map to an air photo and back to topo. The upper left-hand corner has zoom in and out buttons, as well as a dynamic legend that will update depending on what you have on the map. The lower left-hand corner has a reset button, which will reset the map to this view if you're in the middle of a search and you just want to clear everything. And then the lower right-hand corner has a feedback button, which we would really appreciate all of your feedback once you've had a chance to explore the tool on your own. Moving over to the left-hand side, you'll see we have a number of tabs coming down the side. The first is the layer list. This is where you can turn on and off the different layers, as well as add other layers to the map. The first layer that we have is our main database, which is the TWIG Treatment Index and Intersections layer. This is our database of federal fuels treatments, which is currently a combination of facts from the Forest Service and NIFPORs from the Department of Interior. We are currently working on adding IFPERS, the new DOI system of record, and that should be online in the next couple of weeks to month. To get more information about this data set, you can click the Options button here and click View Full Layer Details. To see the metadata, a lot of information about the attributes, how we crosswalked the attributes between the different systems of records, and a lot of other information. Also, under those options, there's the option to view the attribute table, so you can pull that up and look at the attributes that we have in this data set. And then finally, our last option here is to update the layer transparency. This is great for if you want to be able to see what's underneath those treatments. We do have a couple of ways to symbolize the treatments. It does default to years since treatment, but we also have options for symbolizing by the agency that did the treatment, as well as the category of the treatment. We have wildfire data as well on the map. We have 3 different layers: current, recent, and historical. To get more information about any of those layers, you can again click into the layer details to get more information. And we also have a couple of layers which are automatically turned off, but you can turn on, such as the fire reported points of origin, MTBS wildfire burn severity, as well as administrative boundaries. If you'd like to add anything else to the map, we have a few different ways you can do that with our Add Layers button here at the top. First, you can search through our pick list of about 35 options. And select, click that Add button to add the layer to the map. We also have options for adding in a URL if there's a feature service or a web service you'd like to add, or uploading a file such as a shape file or Google Earth file. Anything that you add to the map will only persist for the user session. It is not actually uploaded to us or saved online. Anything that you add to the map will appear here at the bottom under Added Layers, and you'll have those same options for looking at the details or attribute table, as well as an option to remove it entirely from the map. The next tab is the fuels treatment tab. This is the tab where you can filter and search the fuels treatment data. There are options for filtering by the funding source, by the treatment type, by year and acres using these slidey bars or the type tool, or by searching by treatment name if you know it. There are also options you can click for including planned treatments, and also for including treatments from FACT's Common Attributes dataset. Once you have those results, you can click in and it will zoom over, in this case to Arizona, to that treatment. You'll get more information about that treatment, as well as a list of all of the wildfires that have intersected that treatment, which you can download all of these results, either tabular or in a geospatial form. You can also click into any of these fires to get more information about them. The next tab is a wildfire tab, and this tab allows the user to filter or search wildfires. So we have options for filtering by historical, recent, or current, by prescribed or wildfire, as well as years and acres, and searching, of course, by name. So we'll go again, and in this case, zoom over to Colorado. And this will provide more information on the fire itself, and a list of all of the treatments that have intersected that fire. And in this case, they are all coded on the side as whether these treatments occurred before the wildfire, the same year as the wildfire, or after the wildfire. And again, all of this is downloadable. The next tab is the representative summary tab. This is the button that we created just for Congress, since they paid for this. This allows the user to summarize states for senators or congressional districts for representatives, all of the treatments and wildfires that have occurred in a district, as well as provide some other information. So this does take a minute because it's a lot of data. So I'm just going to skip over to another tab that I already have it loaded on. And you'll see that there's information about the district, as well as a lot of metrics, like how much of % of the area was treated, how many structures are in that area, funding amounts, as well as graphs about the funding and treatment types. And over here in the results, there is a list of all of the treatments and wildfires that have occurred in that congressional district, which you can download. All of this is also available in the report using this reports tool, which will turn it all into a PDF, which you can print. Move back to the original. Yeah. It takes about 50 seconds, but it's kind of long during a webinar. The next tab is the area summary tool. This is very similar to the previous tab, but for other types of areas. So in this case, you can draw your own area with the polygon or rectangle or line tool, or you can pick a different kind of boundary from the map, such as a watershed boundary, federal land, state lands, or upload your own layers via this Add Layers tool. So I'm going to select, let's see, just a watershed. And while we're waiting for this, I also want to add that we are updating the user interface in the next couple of months for the production version. And so we are planning on combining the features of the fuel treatment, wildfire, and area summary tab all into one search, which will, I think, streamline the user interface. And so again, you'll see these results for this watershed, and again, all the treatments and wildfires that have occurred within it. For this last tab, I'm going to turn off the layers real quick. This final tab is the wildfire progression tab. And since last July, we've been collecting daily wildfire perimeters in order to further understand and visualize wildfire behavior. This tab is still very much under prototype, but we are going to look at the daily progression of, this is the fire on the north rim of the Grand Canyon. And so you can just search for a fire and then click the play button, and it will show you that daily progression over time. We don't currently have a download button for this data, but we are working on that. If anybody does want this data before that's available on the website, please reach out to us through our website. All right, couple last things that I want to show you. We do have in the lower left-hand corner, we have a print tool. This allows the user to create a map. There's a few customizations, titles, some different sizes that you can choose, and file formats to export a map. We also have a share button to share a URL with somebody, as well as this about button in the bottom corner brings you back to that splash screen. One more thing I want to show you before heading back to the slideshow is under the Resources tab, under TWIG Data Resources. This is the location of all of the information about our data. There are links to download the full data set. There are links to the GitHub for the source, for the code, for how we built this database, metadata, links to all of the other data. So there's a lot of very good information here. So now we can head back to the slideshow. And before I hand back to Aidan, I just want to mention a couple of these standout aspects of TWIG, that we are open access. There's no login required. There's no credentials needed. We are open source. We do provide everything on our GitHub on that page that I just showed you. We do allow our users to download any and all of the data through the viewer or through our website. And we also do have that ability to upload your own layers to view alongside the data in the viewer. I mentioned this briefly, but we also do include FACS common attributes in addition to the FACS hazardous fuels data set. This means that we are including treatments that are not necessarily done for hazardous fuels reduction, but might make a large impact on the landscape. And we also do have that burn severity data that you can look at alongside the treatment and wildfire data. And as I just showed you, we do have those daily fire progressions. We have a data paper that will be coming out very soon with more information about this data, as well as once that is published, our users will be able to cite this data in their research.
Okay, I think it's my turn now. So I'm going to talk a little bit about an example of what you can do with this type of data. So here we are looking at maps of the 2020 Mangum fire, which occurred just north of that Dragon Bravo fire we were just looking at in the TWIG viewer. So with the TWIG viewer and the data available there, you can really easily pull out all of the treatments that occurred previous to that Mangum fire and ask a question like, what effects do these treatments have on wildfire outcomes? So on the left here, you can see the outline of the burn perimeter of that fire, along with previous wildfires and all the treatments that had occurred in that area previous to the Mangum fire. And then on the right, you're just looking at a little map of the burn progression of the fire. And putting this information together, we can start to understand things like how treatments affect the speed of the fire line or how they affect the burn severity of the fire. And I'm going to show you some really preliminary results here. So this is just a very naive model of the first order effect of treatments on burn severity. So, you know, how does burn severity of treated areas compare to burn severity outside of those treated areas? Not considering any covariates at this point, really just the simple relationship between those two. And there are three different types of treatments here. In the yellow, that color represents treatments that are mechanical only, so like a thinning treatment. The purple represents fire-related treatments, like a wildfire managed for benefit or prescribed burn. And then the black are areas that had a combination of fire and mechanical treatments. And on the left, this graph is showing the effect size of those different treatment types and the distribution of effect sizes that across the range of the treatments that occur on that landscape. And the more negative the value here, the greater reduction in burn severity compared to those unburned areas. And you can see that another way in that little bar in the middle where the no treatment areas generally burned at high severity. That's indicated by the little white circle with the caret there. And then the other treated areas, whether it's just a thinning treatment only or a thinning plus a burning treatment, all of those treatments reduced burn severity to different degrees. And on the right, what that panel is showing is how the effect of treatments on reducing burn severity varies by the age of the treatment. So we have all that data on the age of treatments or when those treatments occurred, how many years previous to the fire did they occur. And what that figure shows is that the different treatments, the effect of those treatments sort of decays at different rates. So a decay rate of 0% would mean a treatment is just as effective 1 year when it's 1 year old as it is when it's 5 years old. If the effect decay rate is 2.5%, that means it loses 2.5% of its ability to reduce burn severity each year. And of course, this is a really rough estimate of what's probably a complex nonlinear relationship, but we're simplifying it here for this analysis. And again, this is just an example of the type of thing that you can do with this sort of data. So we are working on this type of research in the ReSHAPE program, but we want to make this type of research available to everybody. And I just share this as an example of the things that you could do with this type of data. And yeah, that's it for me. So next slide.
Thanks, Anson. We'll pass it on to Claire to talk a little bit about the social science side of things.
Yeah, thanks for that setup, Aiden. Yeah, so as another part of the ReSHAPE program is the social science research area, which is generally interested in decision support tool effectiveness, usefulness, ease of use, etc. And although we have an entire program of research, I want to highlight just kind of two ways that that manifests with some projects that we're working on. We've heard a lot about the TWIG tool, and it is the case that the TWIG tool is a key tool assessed by the social science team. So we're very interested in making sure that it is useful and usable to a variety of different people. And to that extent, we have talked to potential users, evaluating the strengths and the weaknesses of TWIG, potential use cases, feeding that back into the development of TWIG and the design of its features, the layout, the functionalities that it has, and how things look. It was pointed out earlier that we do have like a feedback button in the bottom right, and I do want to just plug that again, that receiving feedback and iterating on the tool is unsurprisingly an iterative process. So please continue to give feedback as you work with it and experience it. But to better understand decision support tool effectiveness, we're not just stopping at the TWIG tool. There is looking at individual tools and seeing what are the barriers and facilitators to uses, what makes them useful, how can people foresee using them. But then there's also taking a broader perspective of looking at decision makers and field treatment decision making and policy documents and seeing what sources of information were helpful and what did people arrive at and how do people navigate what is ultimately a very complicated information environment for trying to find the right tool for the right job for the information that people need for field treatments. To that extent, that's where our Community Wildfire Protection Plan, or CWPP project, comes in. The Connect team, the social science team, is interested in understanding the full suite of decision support tools that influence Colorado CWPPs. And we've been working to inventory them to understand what kinds of tools are being used, both in terms of functionality, ease of use, cost, etc., and how different contextual factors like scale, the presence of consultants, etc., how those influence what tools people arrive at and what effect they ultimately have on decision making. So just a bit of a quick crash course on the social science perspective of decision support tools in ReSHAPE.
Thanks, Claire. And now we'll pass it on to Evan to talk about the economics side of our program.
Thanks, Aiden. Thanks, Claire. We'll do a little pivot here to the economics. While there are certainly a lot of reasons to conduct fuel treatments, perhaps the greatest reasons are involved with trying to limit the costs and damages of catastrophic wildfires. And so we've started this ReSHAPE economics portion of the research program a little over a year ago. And we started with looking at kind of an overview of the benefits and costs related to fuel treatments. And you can see a figure on the right there that kind of susses out the different benefits, potential benefits of fuel treatments. The costs of fuel treatments are a little more direct and understandable. There certainly can be some complexity in evaluating the costs, but those are evidence-based and transaction-based, and you can find most of those. The world of the benefits and the potential benefits of fuel treatments is vast. And you can see a couple of different categories that we've broken the benefits of fuel treatments into. On the right-hand side, you have the enhanced initial ecosystem services that come from fuel treatments, and that includes woody biomass for utilization. That includes typically increased water yields downstream. It includes many non-use values and use values, and then property values as well. While all of these initial enhanced ecosystem services, they don't always immediately return positive benefits. Property values is a good example. Sometimes it can decrease adjacent property values due to a lack of shade and aesthetics. But typically from the literature, more of the time, property values are going to be enhanced. On the left-hand side, you can see the avoided wildfire costs. And these are also quite numerous. We've categorized them into 4 broad categories, one being the suppression and response costs that you can avoid with fuel treatments. There's the avoided wildfire costs in the built environment, including residential and commercial structures. This also includes a lot of our infrastructure. And then there's the human health avoided wildfire costs. These fuel treatments can reduce air quality impairment coming from mega catastrophic fires. It can reduce the costs to well-being. That involves both evacuations, that involves the constant worry of living in a high-risk wildfire place, and of course, fatalities and injuries as well. And then there's a broad suite of ecosystem services that see major costs and damages from catastrophic wildfires, and these can be alleviated as well in a number of cases. So we've put that, I think Laurel put in the chat a report, a manuscript that we published a year ago, looking at some of that. We are in the midst of looking at a number of other research areas in terms of the economics of fuel treatments. We convened a workshop last fall with a number of academia and federal experts on economics of fuels treatments. And we have a manuscript currently in review looking at detailed methodology for how to go about appropriately estimating the economic efficiency of fuel treatments. That involves looking at benefit cost ratios among different fuel treatments across landscapes. We're currently very deep in some wildfire damages synthesis. There's been a bit of research, of course, on wildfire costs and damages. Most of it has been around the response and suppression costs, because that's, again, probably the easiest area to document, and the most reported areas are the suppression costs, and then the initial injuries, fatalities, and structural damage are usually the other costs that are quickly reported. But there are many long-term costs. There are many different categories of costs that correlate with the avoided wildfire cost categories you see on the right-hand side. So we are doing a couple of different analyses on wildfire damages so that we can come up with better estimates to put into our avoided wildfire cost modeling. Right now, we don't have a good grasp on what the actual wildfire costs are themselves. So it's even more complicated to determine what the avoided wildfire costs will be or were from fuel treatments. And then our plan next year is to use a lot of our current research to help fill in the blanks and to help provide a landscape level approach of a return on investment for fuel treatments. This will be for a large area, perhaps a county, perhaps a couple of large watersheds. And that's in the works right now. And really our goal is to provide applicable research and tie in these stories and tie them in with synthetic data that can really be used for communities in helping them evaluate the economic efficiency of their field treatments. And I'll stop there. Thank you, Aiden.
7. So now that we've talked a little bit about the research sides of using the TWIG data and how those things can interact, I wanted to mention a few other use cases with the TWIG viewer and associated data. Some of these include checking for accuracy with things that you've seen on the environment, things that you've heard from people, also communication, being able to tell the story of what's happening on the land. Just creating good maps in a quick and easy amount of time, understanding the different funding paths and how funding is getting to different places on the landscape and how it's impacting things, potentially communicating with insurance companies, just receiving data without going through a lengthy request process, writing grant proposals, like Claire said, potentially being used in community wildfire protection plans, and understanding how fuel treatments and fire interact with other types of data, such as wildlife and other things. But there are definitely many use cases beyond those. So now we really want to reach out to all of you and say that we would love to work with you and really get involved with everyone. Some of the ways that we are hoping to work with people across the country include providing workshops on how to use this tool. We have 2 different types of workshops that we would love to offer. One is just an intro 101 to the TWIG tool, and the other one is more of a deep dive into the data and how to use it in analysis. We would also like to continue to partner with people on topics of interest, such as the biophysical effects, decision support tools, return on investment, etc. We want to work together on data integration. We're now working with the National Association of State Foresters to get state level data into our tool, but are willing to have more discussions and hoping to have more discussions on other forms of data integration. We're also hoping that you all apply the data in your work and share your stories broadly. And please feel free to share the tool insight with others. And that being said, please contact us. All of our emails are on our website, reshapewildfire.org, and we would love to talk to you. And big thank you to the Fire Learning Network for hosting us today. We really appreciate the chance to come and talk. And I think we will take some questions now.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. We do have a couple questions and folks can put them in the Q&A tool as well as they think over things. Beth Buchanan asked if there is a layer in the tool that has wildfire crisis strategy landscapes.
Yes, if you go to the add layers and search from that pick list, that layer is there.
Great. Does it include wildfire progression only for active incidents, or is that information there also for historic wildfire data?
Currently, we only have fires that, from last July till now, because that's when we started collecting them. But we are working on getting historical fire data, so we are hoping to have more fires in the future.
Does this tool include, or will it include, NBR data on historical fires? And I don't know what NBR stands for, but maybe you do.
I think that's normalized burn ratio, probably, is what he's asking about, or she. And the closest thing we would have to that would be the MTBS burn severity layer in the TWIG viewer, which I don't believe that viewer is NBR. I think it's RD NBR, relativized differenced normalized burn severity, to pile on the adjectives there. So yeah, that's the only burn severity data that's available directly through the viewer. And I hope that answers the question.
And yeah, Ali did confirm that is what they were talking about. So, Boyd wants to know if the data is shared with Landfire, and if so, what versions of Landfire would they be represented in?
Should I keep going? I can kind of answer that question. So the Landfire Public Events Database is a database that is created and maintained by Landfire. They send out a data call every year for GIS data relating to vegetation treatments and other types of land cover changes. And that is maintained independently of the systems of record in the U.S. Forest Service and the Department of Interior. So although those systems of record from the Forest Service and the Department of Interior go to Landfire, they're not coming through us to get there. We are both pulling from those source records independently. And to add a little bit of color, the Landfire Public Events Database, their call goes out to the public. I believe anybody can submit geospatial data to them, and if it meets their standards, they will ingest it. We don't have a similar public data call, so the Public Events Database, in some respects, will be more comprehensive than what you'll find in TWIG. It's also just built for sort of a different use case, though, as well. Whereas TWIG is really tailored to the wildfire community and the fuels treatment community. So, different tools for different uses, I would say. But hopefully that gives you an overview of what the similarities and differences are.
There are a couple of questions about private lands data and whether those treatments are included. And Karina in particular said that they have experienced difficulties with sharing fuel treatment data that has privacy around it on private lands. So have you all also had any discussions about that and how to integrate data that has those sort of concerns?
We don't currently have any treatments that are done on private land. All of our treatments in the data set right now are from either the Department of Interior or the Forest Service. We are planning on incorporating state data probably within the next 6 months. We're working with the National Association of State Foresters to get that data. But we don't have any plans yet for private data because of some of those same issues. And trying to get all of that data on a national scale is a larger task than we currently have the ability to do.
I could add a little bit of color to that one as well. I see a similar comment from Neris about Washington State data. So the National Fuels Treatment Initiative that's run by the National Association of State Foresters that Katie mentioned, they are our close collaborators, and we are working to ingest their data. If you are somebody that has data, perhaps it represents a federally funded fuels treatment, you have a reporting requirement, or you just have data that you think is relevant. The NFT, National Fuels Treatment Initiative, is built to ingest that type of data, similar to how Landfire has like a public call for data. The NFT research group is working on ingesting that data from all the different state and NGO and perhaps even private sources. So that would be the place to put your data, and it will get into TWIG as we are working with NASF to ingest that data.
Within TWIG, can facts data, FACTS data be filtered by forest and district? And if so, can that spatial and tabular data be exported?
Yes to all of that. And we have tutorials on the website as well for more specifics on how to do that.
A couple questions about updates for data. How often is that being done? And can you speak about the process of getting that data from agencies as you're updating? And one person in particular is thinking about data discrepancies, that they see access to data, those sort of things.
Go ahead.
Katie, you could do it.
Well, yeah, you can fill in anything I forget. We are updating the database weekly, so that gets pulled from facts and NIFPORs weekly. There are many data discrepancies. There's a lot of issues with crosswalking these two data sets together, and especially with adding in the state data that we're planning on adding, that adds a whole nother level of complexity. We have some documentation of that on our website. It is also going to be documented in the data paper that's coming out, some of those issues with trying to merge these data sets. Anything else you want to add, Anson?
We do have error flagging in the TWIG tool as well. So for like things that are duplications or really, really large funding amounts that seem incorrect, there is error flagging on there.
Right. I think I saw a question, I'm not seeing it now, about prescribed wildfires being categorized as treatments. This is a very common issue. And one that we are working to probably sort out again with an error flag. We don't want to actually delete anything from any of these databases or make our own decisions on what to include. But we are creating error flags so that people can filter out some of those issues.
I can add a little bit of color to that as well, specific to Dave's question about the wildfire data showing up as fuel treatments in Massachusetts. So the decision on whether or not to include a wildfire in the treatment database on the side of the Forest Service is made independently in different district offices all across the country, and it's not made consistently. So in different places, certain things will count as a treatment and other things will not. And there's no consistency across the nation about how that happens. So we do have a treatment. It's the TWIG category attribute, which is an attribute that categorizes all fuel treatments into one of 5 categories. And one of those 5 categories is unplanned ignition. So if you do not want to count wildfires as treatments by your own definition, you can screen by that unplanned ignition attribute value, and that would give you just treatments that are not wildfires.
Beth has a question about tribal lands and whether those are included, and if so, is that inclusive of all tribes?
We do have data that the BIA provides us through Department of Interior, but otherwise we don't have any other tribal data. We are certainly interested in it, but we also recognize that there are data sovereignty issues, and we're also, again, it is a big lift to try to contact and get data from tribes across 50 states and territories.
Does this overlap with IFTDSS?
I can answer that question. So IFTDIS, oh, that's a nasty acronym, and I can't remember exactly what each letter stands for, but the most relevant component of IFTDIS is, in relation to what we're talking about today, is the FTEM fuels treatment effects. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Kendra. Kendra is the IFTDIS expert in the room here. So she should really be answering this question alongside us. But the FTEM application includes treatment data from FACS, which is the Forest Service system of record, and it is specific to Forest Service lands, and it takes a little bit more narrow definition of what it considers a fuels treatment. So it pulls from what's called the FACS hazardous fuels database. We pull from the FACS hazardous fuels database as well, but also the larger FACS common attributes database, taking a little bit more expansive definition of what should count as a fuels treatment. So there is definitely overlap in the data that you will find in FTEM and TWIG. Also, IFTDIS does 100 other really cool things related to modeling and simulation that the TWIG viewer just doesn't even attempt to do. So again, it's sort of different tools for different uses with some degree of overlap.
You mentioned facts again. Does that weekly facts update include updates or changes from previous fiscal years or just current updates?
I'll take a stab at that one as well. So I think we're talking about whether or not records that already exist in FACS are updated on that weekly schedule as well. And the answer is yes. We do update the older records in FACS as they're updated in the FACS system of record each week, in addition to adding the new records that are created since the previous week's update. So everything should reflect one-to-one what you will find in the FACS source database.
Another question sort of, and just following up on data discrepancies, is there a plan for handling those? You've spoken to this a little bit already. GIA notes that they have a similar tool in Washington, the Washington State Forest Health Tracker, and that it doesn't get used as widely because of those discrepancies, which is too bad because it is really useful.
I think part of what we're trying to do is provide essentially like workarounds and other tools to still use the data while learning how to filter out the discrepancies and learn to get like what you need out of the tool, bearing in mind that those discrepancies do exist. Anson, does that seem accurate?
Yes, that's correct. So on the issue of data discrepancies, there is a lot we can do just by comparing one data set to another to determine, what looks like a duplication, what looks like an error in one database versus another. Ultimately, it would be really awesome to have some type of ground truthing data to say, hey, these records are conflicting, or we're not really sure what happened here based on the record. Is there some ground truthing we can do to determine whether or not this record is correct? And we would love to move in that direction. We sort of have a long-term plan of moving in that direction, where we can actually validate the presence or absence of field treatments with remote sensing data. So that's far in the future. For now, we're just looking at the data itself and sort of trying to determine where the errors exist. And as Aiden said, flag those errors, but not remove them, leaving it to the end user to screen out those records according to the flags that we've created.
Evan, did you have your hand up to add something? Okay, cool. And Beth did add that, Anson, you're correct. F10 looks at federal lands only treatments that are defined as fuels treatments. F10 is a subset of facts which captures Forest Service only vegetation treatments, regardless of whether those are defined with a hazardous fuel reduction objection. And she says this is a critical distinction, rather. Let's see. Joe Roisey asked if you can simulate fires across the landscape.
You cannot. TWIG does not provide modeling or simulation features. We are providing only data that already exists.
That is the type of thing IFTDIS would do.
You had talked a little bit at the beginning of your presentation about working with stakeholders really extensively to develop this tool. Could you talk just a little bit more about sort of what that looked like and who was part of that process as you were developing this?
Katie, do you want to take that one as one of the early?
At the beginning, when we first started this project, we assembled a advisory team of federal advisors from the Forest Service and the Department of Interior. And we had several stakeholder meetings with them, as well as other data managers in this sort of field. And kind of talk to them about what they felt was missing from what existed, what we could add to, what maybe where there was too much overlap. We wanted to make sure that we were making a tool that was different. There are a lot of tools out there. Let's see, and then since then we have, who else have we incorporated? I'm trying to think. Mostly been federal advisors, I think.
Yeah, we definitely work closely with advisors from the Forest Service, the Department of Interior, as well as data managers from FTEM and FACTS and NIFPORs and Landfire. And so we know that there's a lot of decision support tools out there, and it really does matter a lot to us to make sure that we're not overlapping with what others are doing, that our tool is different, and that we're communicating as best we can with those other stakeholders what each tool is best for.
Right, and we do continue to have regular meetings with data managers, with these advisors, to kind of keep everybody up to date on what everyone's doing, and so that we're not all duplicating effort, and how we can help each other.
And finally, unless folks have other things, and feel free to add in the chat or Q&A if you do. But you mentioned requesting workshops. If folks are interested in that, do they need to come with funding to support that, or any other sort of resources to request one of those?
No. So we will be hosting workshops at some upcoming conferences. So those are a really easy way if you're already going to SAF, AFI, the biennial conference. We'll be hosting workshops at all of those. But for other workshops that you just want to request, especially if you're in Colorado, New Mexico, and Arizona, those are really easy ones for us to do since we're based out of those states. For ones further afield, we're definitely talking about the possibility of doing virtual workshops to lower the costs as well. But feel free to reach out and we can definitely have a conversation about how to make that work.
And Beth says, remind us how you recognize multiple treatments on a footprint, and do they all show up? She says, I know you can hide wildfires.
Yeah, so if you click in the TWIG viewer on a footprint, there will be a pop-up. If there are additional treatments underneath that top one, there'll be a little button on the upper right-hand corner so that you can toggle through them.
And related to that, sometimes you'll find treatments with the exact same footprint and the exact same treatment type and the exact same treatment date, which suggests they are duplicates. All of the duplicates are still in there in the database on the viewer, but in that specific circumstance of the matching footprint, date, and treatment type, we have flagged those records with a duplicate flag that appears in the error column, so you can screen those out if you want to.
Well, thank you all for your time. This was wonderful. I really appreciate all of your expertise and your thoughts. Again, this will be posted on the Fire Learning Network YouTube channel. So if you had folks who couldn't show up today, that'll be available hopefully in a couple days, and you'll get an email about that. Is there anything else that y'all would like to add before we sign off?
Thanks for having us today.
Yeah, thanks so much. And thanks everyone for being here, and have a great day. Bye, y'all.